Again, welcome. Thanks so much for coming along today. My name is Philip Young. I'm the project leader for NEMO New Media Modern Democracy. It's a research project that I'm going to talk to you about later in the morning. But I'm just here to say hello. We've got some fantastic speakers today. Really pleased to see so many people. We've got people from across Skåne, from across Sweden, and from several other countries as well. So it's great to see people coming in and seeing what we've got to offer at campus in the Department of Strategic Communication.
Department for Strategic Communication is one of the very much fast-growing departments at Campus Helsingborg, Lund University. We started off in the year of 2000, something like that. And now it is actually the largest department for strategic communication studies in Sweden, and also one of the larger environments in Europe. One of the focus areas when it comes to education and research is new media, social media, digitalization, and so on. And we also hope that this conference and this project will boost more research into that area.
I started my career in public relations 20 years ago when it was all about media relations. And a lot of organizations still practice public relations in this way, that you create a piece of content, you create some messages, you craft a press release around those messages, you send that out to loads and loads of journalists that you think might vaguely be interested in it, and then you call the journalists up and you say, have you got my press release, are you going to write it? And we're moving away from that. Finally, as a profession, we have the opportunity to connect one-on-one with audiences through this thing called the internet. And guess what? When you have a two-way conversation with someone, you've kind of got to be interesting. You can't talk about yourself all the time. You can't finesse your story in a way that you hope will make you look good, because that's frankly going to be boring. The only way you can engage is by finding this center ground where you talk to the audience and interact with the audience on the terms that it's interested in, going to be interested in. And that's a massive shift for most brands. Most brands just want to talk to themselves. So what we're seeing is social media is moving from brands using it as a means of communicating with an audience, pushing messages out to an audience to the point where they realize, hang on, we can't just do this, because unless we're doing it in the right tone of voice, we don't get the reaction we kind of like. Shifting from there to sales. Okay, we can use this stuff to sell and engage with community, to customer service, and so it goes on. It's very, very easy to cause a frenzy online. Very, very easy. Frankly, if you say the wrong thing on Twitter at a certain time during a TV show, or you criticize someone on the X Factor in the UK, you can very quickly cause a storm of uproar on Twitter. Similarly on Facebook. And lots of examples of cause-related groups are launched that gets hundreds and hundreds of thousands of likes, and that's excellent. It's bringing together a community, but it's almost too easy, because then that doesn't fall over into real change. There's a real disconnect between the simplicity and the ease of a click online and actually doing and making and affecting change in the real world. And real change is a lot bloody harder than clicking a Facebook like. We have to move to these new forms of engagement. We have to move quickly. Now, the majority, I'd say 50% of the profession are, but there's an awful lot are not. And guess which 50% I want to be in. And here's where we're going. We're going from media relations through influencer relations, media relations working with wining and dining journalists and partying, influencer relations, extending that to other forms of influencer and stakeholder, to the management of communities and the development of communities and engagement on the web, to where Philip's going to talk you through social business, and social business through the life cycle of an organization.
I don't do too many audience participation, put your hands up things, but literally, hands up who doesn't get enough email. Okay. So just as well, we're finally transitioning here. We had old files and old folders, and so when we went digital, guess what we did? We had files and folders. Crazy, and it's only now that we're moving towards a sort of search paradigm, as they might say on the West Coast. We went from an analog desktop and then we made a desktop. Flipping heck, people. Really, is this the best we can do with technology? Now we've got home screen and widgets and gesture, much more intuitive. We're making the IT serve us rather than us serve the IT. Well, you might think we are, but 10 years into social media, we've gone from tall office blocks that weren't social to tall office blocks that have a Facebook page and a Twitter handle. Really? Is that the best we can do? I don't think so. I'm an optimist. We can do more than just bolt social on. We can actually build it in. So social selling can only try and focus immediately on the value thing. Can we sell more? Whereas social business focuses across this entire stack. And as more and more of the non-PR professionals in an organization get this, the more they're going to start looking at this layer first and start calling on PR practitioners to grow up from the way they currently practice, as Steve unfortunately accurately conveyed. Which of these influence flows are you currently focused on at the moment? And as Stephen said, they're largely focused on number one. In fact, we're just teasing them to start focusing a little bit on number two, how stakeholders influence each other. Systematically, can we get number three flowing for us? Rather than doing a once a year or twice a year piece of market research, can we do real-time listening and monitoring? Systematically being influenced. And with everything happening in the digital space, we can be constantly aware of the three flows between our competitors and their stakeholders. Who's doing this? Has anybody seen this in practice yet? I haven't. Why not? It's possible. So how might we define social business? Well, I like to say it involves designing the organization around influence flows, connecting everybody involved with it, connecting all the data, information, and knowledge, so that that collection of people, that organization, can work more openly, productively, and profitably. People are the problem. We can't reorganize, particularly when you've been an individual in an organization that's been run a certain way for the last 25, 30 years. You've just got to the top of it, and we're now saying to you, could you just undermine all those ways you got to the top of the organization just so that we can reinvent the way business works? They're finding it very difficult. I, for one, am impatient for them to retire. But they probably have 10, 15 years left in them.
What we're here to do is to develop new knowledge, that's what universities do, and explore new ways of understanding the significance of social media, the way it's impacting on PR and communication practice. And we're also putting in the context of democracy, the idea that the social media might empower people, that it allows us to talk to people, to create dialogues. And we're also trying to build the research culture here at the Institute of Strategic Communication. As Jesper said, we're still quite young, but we're growing very quickly. We've got some fantastic people here. It's a really exciting place to work. We're looking at the way that new technologies, social media, are changing organizations. And most of all, we're building new knowledge. We're exploring things that are exciting and changing, and are doing things that most of us probably just didn't even believe would be happening a few years ago.
What's the role for new media in all of this? How does it help? And actually, how does it hinder? Because I think it's not always useful. It's not always good. Or at least it's not always done well. Here's the problem. Here's the catch. Because all of this, if we're going to have a new politics, if we're going to have a different way of doing politics, that doesn't just mean politicians have to be different. It means that voters have to be different too. In my book, I talk about the problem that I describe as Peter Pan politics, which is this world where voters believe that politics is something that is done to them, rather than something that they will get involved and do themselves. And I think if we can't move away from that, then we're really in trouble. We need to have a different kind of politician, sure, but actually voters themselves have to say, yep, I'm in. And at the moment, they're not quite saying that. So they're 10 top tips. So the first, and some of them I've already referred to, listen. Politicians must listen even when they don't like what they hear. Politicians must be authentic. They must be true to themselves. Politicians must admit their mistakes. When they do something wrong, they shouldn't just run in the opposite direction. They should say, yep, it's a fair cop. I made a mistake. Here's what I'm going to do about it. Politicians must show whose side they're on and pick a fight if necessary. Be brave, be prepared to take people on to confront their enemies. Politicians must connect at an emotional level, because in the end, if I'm the voter, it's all about me and my family, and that's really what I care about. I don't care so much about how you're going to do something, I care about what you're going to deliver. Politicians must be accountable. They had some very interesting ideas here. They quite liked the idea of politicians having to produce a kind of annual report where they said, this is what I've done, this is what I'm doing, this is what I've done this year, I've achieved these 3 things, I promised I'd do this, I've done that. They only start to get into what the public might do and the role the public have in the voter, actually when we get to idea number 7. But they did feel that they didn't know enough. They did feel that schools don't tell us enough about the democratic process, don't encourage people to engage with the democratic process, don't give them the tools they need to get involved. And they all said, we've been doing this, we've been turning up to these group discussions sort of over the last 6 weeks. Boy, we know more than we did, and we're talking about it with our families, and we're kind of energised. We need to find imaginative ways of educating the public. And politicians need to use, and maybe we'll come on to social media in a moment, but use every opportunity to share what they're doing. We need to know. And they need to be proud. They need to hold their heads up. They need to speak with pride about what they're doing. But they need to do that in a way that we can understand. And I think a lot of people felt, I tested during the course of the campaign, a lot of speeches that were made during that campaign. Most often people said, it's impenetrable. I don't understand it. It's full of jargon. I don't know what that means. So use language, images, and initiatives that are accessible and down to earth. Here's the upside. Yes, of course it can help. It's clear and it's simple, and it encourages politicians to be reductive.
I heard whispers. I was sitting there and I heard whispers in the background just behind me that, you know, the youth target group, that's not me, is it? So, haha. It is. It will be in 2 years' time, because the way that youth communicate and take to themselves communication is very much what's going to happen for the entire population in 1-2 years, because they're early adapters. So I worked for Ryanair, and that taught me a lot, extreme provocative communication in a very, very specific ways. They did exactly all the things that your school books tell you that you should do. They did the opposite, and it worked much better. Many of the world's prominent PR people don't know what communication should be, because they still work in a very, very old-fashioned way about addressing media, and they still think it's about press releases, talking to the media, and having to do with journalists. That is not at all what it is. It's the story we need to focus on, and if the story doesn't get you emotionally, it's a bad story. And it doesn't matter where you work. If you work at Höganäs, I was talking to some people at lunch, or if you work for MTV, you need to touch people emotionally with your story. If you can't do that, nobody's going to hear you. You can use as much Facebook and Twitter and whatever you want. It's not going to work. Working in the television industry, we don't talk about TV anymore. We talk about multiple screens. TV is dead. It's been dead for quite some time. It's not dead per se. It's actually climbing, viewing. Normal TV is climbing. But the concept of television is changing so fast that you watch tablets, you use social media, and you watch television. In Sweden and in many countries, we have such a good network. My father-in-law is a farmer, and he sits on his big tractor with an iPad watching things while plowing the fields. It's not a joke. This is how it works. And you know, when that generation does, it's not about youth anymore. It's about new behaviors. Some bloggers in Sweden have 1 million readers a week. Totally outclasses the biggest media we have in Sweden. And that importance and that power that they sit on is absolutely fantastic. But it's tough to work with them. What you send to your friends is usually a fun clip or a fun statement or something like that. Oh, look at this. That is 90% of the traffic that goes around among you. If you tie that into something you actually want to say, it becomes really powerful. Comedians is something that we are using, not just for Comedy Central, but for all our brands to make communication within social media travel, and it works fantastically well. All this media that we have, you have to do communication that is unlike your competition. Because if you do something that is very much like the competition, Sure, you're not going to get fired because everyone's going to say you took the safe road, that's, but you're not going to make the big bang.
So, when I was 5 years old, I declared to my mom and to all of her best friends that I was going to be the Prime Minister of Sweden. I have not yet become the Prime Minister of Sweden, and neither has any woman in this country, as you know. I come from a PR world. When I did not become a Prime Minister, I became a PR consultant. That was like the closest thing these days. So I've been working a whole lot with stereotypes in media, gender equality, and I just want to start with something that is to me very important. Here is something hugely important when it comes to gender equality. Gender equality is not a matter of opinions, it is a matter of knowledge and facts. And we should never ever let anyone get away when discussing gender equality with arguments that are, I feel we're gender equal, or I think it is, because we have all the facts. And if we let people get away with feeling that it's gender equal, we might never ever get to a society that really is gender equal. 76% of everyone in news media all over the world today are men. 76% of everyone in news media all over the world today are men. The way we see our society are based on the feelings and the experiences and the expertise of who? Men. Working with PR, I've been talking to the journalists, talking to the publishers, all of them. How come all the experts are men? How come we really want the women, but we can't find them? There aren't any women who... And every now and then someone says, well, what's the problem with Robert? As if you really have to sort of find his problem before you let a woman take his place. So he really wanted them, but he couldn't find them. So I said, let me help. Next year, for every comedian you can think of who's a man, I will think of 10 others. For every theater expert, chef, etc., I'll think of 10 others. And then you can choose the way you want to for it to become a fantastic gala. But if the problem is that you just can't find them, let me help. I went to my computer and I started a Facebook page and I named it Rättviseförmedlingen. Rättvisa as in justice, but also as in showing the right way and representation. Visa rätt. In English, that would be some kind of equality and lists. I wrote, hi, we're here to help you find the other than men for your expert panels, your TV shows, your history books, your DJ booths. We're here to help you find other than women that can talk about perhaps raising kids, because I believe other than women are parents. And we can help you find people with another background than Swedish who can talk about something other than their exotic background, perhaps their expertise. It's totally free. Here we are at 10 o'clock Monday morning. I could send this list. 130 names of DJs who aren't men. I can just quickly, thank you. I love getting applause for that because I wrote about 2 of these names. The rest of them came from about 800 people who had joined the Facebook page. And this list we could send to all the nightclubs in Sweden who said, we really love the women, there aren't any women who can. And the media loves us, of course. We make their job easy. We do it for free. And so especially in Sweden, most journalists have like this agenda of portraying society just as it is, portraying the people in society. And we help them do that. And it goes really quick. It's really easy.
I've been blogging for 5 years. Today I have about 150,000 readers a week, which is a lot. I study strategic communication here at Lund University. And I write in a Swedish magazine called Veckorevyn. So in 2005, when blogs began being big in Sweden, I thought it was really silly. It was stupid. It was just picture-perfect people with perfect homes. They ate perfect food. And I didn't feel good about myself when I read these blogs. So I figured that I should make fun of the whole thing. So I created Egoina, which is my alter ego. And she was everything that the other bloggers wasn't. She was untidy, she was careless, she didn't care. Today, I write like funny conversations with my friends and put up pictures from my normal day life and write little stories. And this is also what I write in Veckorevyn. So here is some tips on how to make a successful blog. And you often say that quality is better than quantity, but I think it's the other way around when it comes to blogging, because you don't visit a blog that's never updated. So even if the update's not as good, you have to keep it coming. And make yourself known. They won't visit a blog that they don't know exists. So you have to comment in other social medias, in other blogs, and post your blog link everywhere. And provoke. And I thought I should talk about a little what engaged people. And that's really weird, because I don't know. Sometimes when I write things, and like this post, I asked why there was a black dot in my almanacka. And I got 589 answers. And I don't know why. But yeah, it's really weird. So I get a lot of emails from PR companies who want me to write about stuff, and I get a lot of packages sent home, like 3 to 4 every week maybe. And after I receive the packages, I often get an email like, hey, did you receive our package? Why haven't you written about us yet? And that really annoys me, because I don't do stuff for free. But in this case, I did. And that was because they took the time to write something personal. They wrote like, oh, we read on your blog that you're having a cold, hope this helps, blah, blah.
The number of men moving into public relations at a junior level is growing. And we all know that women outnumber men in junior positions in PR. But when it gets to senior positions, the women have just, they've gone. Now, I carried out some research among kind of junior to mid-level PR practitioners. So for those of you who work in PR, sort of account executive to account manager or PR manager, press officer level. And what I did, I basically tried to find out what people did. Women basically do everything. And the higher they go up the management, towards management, they might do more of the big, responsible, strategic stuff, but they keep hold of all the admin roles. And basically men at junior or senior level do fewer tasks. They do a lot less. What I actually found out was that women are active on social media channels, very active indeed, but they spend their time on the whole, and these, I'm not saying this is the case all the time, they spend their time watching rather than actually creating and interacting. Men tweet more than women. I can't remember the exact figures, but my top tweeter was male and tweeted 700 times in 1 week. And I was doing, some of you who've done social sciences will know about content analysis. I had to do content analysis on his tweets, and I actually wanted to kill him. Something very, very strange is happening, because the women kind of get what you might call the kind of boring social media jobs, like the running of the Twitter feed. And I know some of you might say, actually, it's great to run a Twitter feed, and I'm sure there are some which are really good fun to run. But if you're just answering inquiries and saying, I'm sorry your parcel hasn't arrived, I'm sorry your plane is late, it's not giving you a chance to actually build your own personal networks, to interact, to acquire expert knowledge, all that sort of stuff. So much blogger relations is now just about organising giveaways with minor bloggers, sending them packs in the post, as Egoina was just talking about. So overall, women are involved far more than men in mechanistic and boring social media roles in the workplace. Does social media destroy public relations careers? It can, because if the men are taking all the interesting roles and the women are being left with the really dull social media roles, essentially it's replicating what's happened in public relations over the last, 50, 60, 70 years, that you've got a lot of women, really bright, really keen, really enthusiastic, ending up doing the very administration-led jobs where they're not actually getting a chance to develop those management level skills.
In the United States, we found out that we're not really good at preparing for crises. When we ask our citizens to make plans for what you would do during a crisis, or to create kits so you'd be ready for a crisis, we found out no one was paying any attention to it. So what they did is they created the Zombie Apocalypse Campaign. The zombies are out there, and they're going to spread, and they're going to spread everywhere. And are you ready for the zombie apocalypse? And truly, in the U.S., we have people who take this seriously. If you're ready for the zombie apocalypse, you're ready for a flood. You're ready for a hurricane. You're ready for a tornado. And that's how they were trying to break through, because they wanted people to get the message, because they have to know that the federal government can't be everywhere at once. And so there's going to be times they're on their own, and they're going to have to be ready for disasters. Something in zombies struck a chord, and it did get people interested in it. And the reason I'm saying it's the zombies is they were running the exact same type of program, using the same social media channels prior to that. When we talk about social media, they think that social is a tactic. Well, it's not. The same way media is not a strategy. It's how you use it. You use media strategically, and in itself, it's simply a tactic. And what we need to start thinking about more in public relations, at least in the United States with social media, is we need to be thinking about message design. What is the message we're trying to get across? And social media crises are concerns that either begin in or they become amplified throughout the social media and can harm the organization. And what I want to say today is the social media crises are potential zombies. They're zombies for organizations. And this is a different type of crisis than what we've been used to dealing with. In the past, what crisis management was built upon, beginning in the 80s, both in the United States and in Europe, is on operational threats. Something is going to stop my company from producing goods or delivering services. So that's what we were worried about. Well, now we're not. Now these social media crises are emerging. It's a new type. It's a little bit of a new world out there. Your first concern when you're faced with zombies is, where are the zombies? Because you don't want them to get you. And this is where we need to start thinking, and we're seeing changing very, very rapidly, that organizations are scanning social media for potential crises. When we look at social media crises, we can think of them as really what term a paracrisis. And this is where you're actually managing a crisis threat in public. And that's new. It used to be in crisis management, again, going back sort of the old paradigm, no one saw when I prevented a crisis. I didn't tell anybody. You don't tell anyone when I almost blew up the nuclear reactor. You say, it's just another day, all right? So things are fine. Now you can't. This is being done in public on social media. Well, you want to reduce the reputational damage. You want to reduce anger and anxiety that might be created by these crises. We can talk about trying to preserve purchase intention. If you're customer driven, you're really worried that this is going to cost me sales. And we'll talk about some examples of that in a minute. You want to minimize media coverage, the amount and the duration. You don't want the media, the traditional media, picking up on it, and you don't want the social media picking up on it. The ones that have been truly horrific social media crises just create this firestorm and keep snowballing and just kind of suck up a lot of your reputational capital. And so we found the zombies, now we need to kill them. And I'll show you some real zombie killing things in just a moment. But this is the ones for the online zombies here. All right. We're going to just keep calm, carry on for all the British here, and you're going to kill zombies. All right? And I'm not going to go into detail on the table, but the table is a use of strategy. How can we use communication responses strategically to achieve our objectives? And our objectives are to kill these online zombies. And so this is really sort of a way to summarize my previous talk about, sometimes you need to apologize, sometimes you make changes, sometimes you refute the changes. But it's the idea, the need to think about, what are we really doing here? Consider the value in responding. You need to act on customer complaints. However, you do not respond to trolls, and that's a flame war. You don't need to get into that. There are thousands, perhaps tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people out there who have nothing better to do than to sit at their computer screen and type really nasty things about you or your organization. Most companies now have a social media plan. The social media policy should be integrated into your crisis management plan. And you should very clearly articulate who's going to run and how social media works during a crisis. And you should have your social media manager on your crisis management team. Today's zombies are different from old zombies. If you go back to the old black and white zombie movies, they were created through voodoo and magic. Nowadays, they're viruses. And that's how we've seen a move from operational to reputational. These are a different variety of crises for a lot of the crisis managers that are out there. And some of our old practices have been slow to modify to them. and you do not manage like a zombie. All right? You have weapons, you better know how to use them. And so here's different ways to kill zombies, and you can actually buy these online, these zombie killing axes.
Thank you.